All right. Hi, this is Ibadi and X from the Candid Frame, and we're going to do a little something different. Well, we're always trying to do a little something different, but we're trying to do a variety of different things with this new YouTube channel. And one of the things that I've been wanting to do for a while is to have the opportunity to talk about, a selection of photographs with people. And for those of you who have listened to the Candid Frame before, you know that it is a dedicated audio podcast. So we don't have the opportunity to show individual images at any given point. So the YouTube channel is going to allow us to be able to do just that and have a more in-depth conversation about the photographs and the story behind the photographs. And today's guest is Kevin Mullins. Is that did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And he sent me links to some wonderful images that he gave of a birth. And I thought that the images were not only beautiful, but were really adept at telling a photo story. And Kevin's a wedding photographer, and I'll tell you a little bit about himself in a moment. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the images in the form of a slideshow at first, and then we're going to go in depth behind the individual images and the story behind them. So, Kevin, why don't you introduce yourselves and provide our listeners a little background into who you are and what you do?
Okay. Well, firstly, thanks for inviting me on. And I am, as you said, I'm a wedding photographer. I'm based in the West Country of England, in a county called Wiltshire. I'm the style of weddings that I shoot is it's purely reportage, so it's not really traditional wedding photography. It's all about storytelling and emotion and human contact, etc. That's the kind of photography that floats my boat. So it's the strand that I've kind of implanted into my wedding photography. So I shoot exclusively in that style. I don't really do any kind of posing or directing of the clients, and the clients that come to me are appreciative of that style of photography. I kind of see it as almost like street photography at a wedding. That's really how I kind of sell myself to the clients, I guess. So I've been doing that now for professionally for almost 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, and it's my full-time job. I do a little bit of training and writing along with it. But it's pretty much that time of the year, full on wedding season right now.
It's a busy, yeah, of course, a busy time for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, what I'd like to do, uh, we'll start showing you the images in a moment. But first off, why don't you just tell us the story behind them as I get ready to show the photograph.
Okay. Um, okay. Well, basically, what's happened here is I shot some images of my own son's birth a few years back, and I popped them on my website. There was nothing in detail. It was just kind of labour, pains, etc. My wife, and I run some workshops over here, and another photographer had come along to one of my workshops a while back, and subsequently she became pregnant and got in touch and asked me if I would be interested in being part of the birth, effectively, and photograph it as a story and as it unwrapped. It was a cesarean section, so it was relatively easy to organise in terms of the timings, etc. It was a planned birth. So of course, I'm a people photographer, so this kind of thing is really touching for me to be invited to do that, really, and I jumped at the chance, and so there I went. I went along to it, and we spoke a lot about it in the first place, and Agatha, who's the mum, she's the photographer as well. She spoke to the surgeons and the doctors, and all the permissions were given, and so I went along and I shot it. I shot it as best as I could. They were delighted with the images, and so was I.
Had you ever shot anything like that before?
Not really, apart from my own children, which was only kind of for family memories, really. But no, absolutely never. It's something that's really interested me. Like I say, I like photographing people and stories, and that whole element of humanity is really what kind of makes me click. And I think that's probably about as delicate a moment as you can possibly be involved in terms of photography, and I really enjoyed it, and the results I think were very pleasing for me and the family as well.
Yeah, yeah, we can see him now.
Okay, I can only see that, so I can't see the Hangout.
Yeah, that's fine. You'll just see that. So you can just go through the images there and
So
go ahead and just talk about the
that's the whole
story.
lot. Do you want me to go through the whole set?
Yeah, you
I'll
don't
kind
have
of
to talk about each individual image. You can just talk in
no.
general in terms of, getting ready to shoot that. And then if there's an individual photograph that you'd like to
Okay.
talk about, we can certainly do that.
Okay, and the color ones aren't included in this one. I've got those separately. If
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
very
does
good.
that make sense? Okay. Okay, ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the day basically started with me turning up at the hospital at the same time as Agatha and her husband, and it was time for the prep for the theatre, and the doctors and the midwives, etc., came along. Obviously, my style is to be as discreet as absolutely possible. So, I kind of used very small cameras, didn't use any DSLRs, and I was very, it's a relatively small room, so being involved in the whole shooting part of it was, it was kind of a privilege, really. But it was also important for me to make sure that I remained as discreet as possible. And so we'll just kind of go through this. There's husbands looking on a little bit nervously. Agatha having the final preps. So part of my remit is as a photographer, everything for me really needs to tell a story. So including you'll see the clock throughout the day, and that kind of links everything together. Blood pressure machines, etc. Now, the mum had actually said to me in advance that she was more than happy for any kind of what's the word, gory images, etc. She was happy to see those herself. She wanted to see those in the future. So I wanted to make sure I got as much of the medical elements of it involved as possible, such as the blood pressure machines, etc. So images like this of her looking at that and kind of falling into the time that's coming ahead is pretty nice for me. Some smiles, etc. It was really important for me to get the husband involved as well. He's obviously the second biggest part of the whole day at this point. So I wanted to. This was actually the first time I've met him at this point. So I wanted to make sure that he was equally as part of it as possible. So more of the storytelling elements. I get to final kind of sitting up and some silhouettes adds to the story. I think a little bit of artistic motion. The blood pressure again. The final moments really now before the nerves start kicking in for both of them. I think this is coming into the final part before the surgery was due. The surgery was delayed by about an hour. So I try and concentrate. When I'm doing my wedding photography, I'll kind of concentrate on touch and human emotions, etc. So moments like this where she's clearly nervous and playing with her fingers, etc., I think add to the story. So there's the clock again. Final interactions between the two of them. And I'm obviously very close to them here. I'm using a little Fuji X100s at this point, so it's deadly silent, and I'm trying to get the clock in, the story, as well as the kind of elements of humanity between the two of them. Here we go again through there. This lady here on the right-hand side was a friend of Agatha's who was next in line, effectively. Once her baby was delivered, her friend was due next, so they popped outside for a quick little conversation. Nervous husband getting ready. Final text messages. And there we go, the clock again. Again, some nervous twitches. And they're off to the theatre. Literally, it's a case of the midwife comes along and says, "Right, let's go." Of course, there's no labour involved in a cesarean section, so that element of it isn't here at all. So now we're down into the surgery, and the surgeons and the doctors were absolutely wonderful. They literally said to me, just be as absolutely discreet as you can. If we don't want to be able to hear any clicks, etc. So the X100S was perfect for that. Here we are again, the pre-surgery medication going in. The doctor and the surgeon themselves were very part of the procedure too, so I wanted to make sure that they were part of the story in the photos. Final smiles. This is the epidural being injected, and here we go. So the scan, and then really the next set of pictures are probably where the kind of real emotion of it comes into play, I guess. So the surgery is in procedure at this point, and here we have the little girl being brought into the world, and the second image of that. So very first seconds of the life. And then around the other side we have this this view of the baby, and this is obviously the mother here. So for me, when I showed this to my own wife, she was quite emotional herself, because this is the kind of moment that's very precious for everybody involved. And dad is here, mum is here, and here is the newborn baby. And just backing out a little bit. Luckily, this light, actually, from a technical point of view, was very bright. So, spot metering on the baby, gave it a little bit more drama. There we have a little bit of a crop of the little baby. It's a beautiful, lovely little girl. And here we are, first moments with the baby literally straight out. The cord is cut and given to the mum straight away. And the happy smiles, of course, which will always be there. And then the other elements of the story that mum really wanted me to cover were the way in, and the tidying up of the baby once it's been born, and the close-ups. So here, this image is taken from a technical point of view with a Fuji XT1 with a 56mm lens. So step through. So dad, and they're just about to measure the little baby. Close-ups there, and there she is on the weighing scale, so a little bit more storytelling there with the weight of the baby. Final tidying up of the surgery, and then we have dad with the baby. First cuddles. I remember these times myself, so they're precious. And then the kind of everything's done now. I was very surprised. The actual procedure took probably half an hour in total, but the actual the delivery took maybe 3 minutes, so it was very quick. And so I had to kind of work very quickly for that. So there we have these images coming through, little kind of storytelling moments. Oops, skip through there. So we're now kind of 4 hours later. We're in the room, and baby's here and delivered, and everything is happy and done. So that's the full set.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful set of images. I really love this body of work.
Thank you.
How did you start thinking about shooting this before you went there? Because even though you've done storytelling in terms of images of weddings in terms of storytelling, this is the first time that you've sort of photographed a birth. So how were you sort of thinking in terms of what shots you would need to get in order to be able to tell the complete story?
That's a really good question, because I did spend many hours thinking about this beforehand, wondering how it would unfold. Obviously, I did a little bit of research. Sorry,
if you could
go ahead.
Back to you so we can see you where you're talking.
Okay. Yeah.
And then if you want to go back to any individual image, feel free to do that at any point.
Okay. Is that better? Am I back now? Yeah. Okay. So I'd kind of researched C-section videos and kind of pictures on YouTube, etc. But I really went into the whole thing with the mindset that I wanted to photograph it as I photograph pretty much every wedding, which is from start to finish. There's a story. There was every wedding, just like this birth, has a start, there's a middle, and there's an end. So I wanted everything to link together. The clock obviously was part of that, and that kind of tied things together, tied elements of the day together. But I didn't really go in with any shot list or anything, because I also knew that the end of the day, that if the surgeon said, no photos, or if something needed to happen very quickly in the theatre, then I may have to leave. So I didn't actually go with any kind of shot plan as such. I really, really wanted to give them a documentary of the day, in really as intimate a way as possible, I guess. And it helped that Agatha was a photographer, so she obviously knew of my style and knew what she wanted, which was great, and we spoke about that in the first place. So there are other images that I wouldn't share publicly that she has, that that also kind of add to the story, and she, she's really grateful for those. As was her husband. In fact, I think her husband was a little bit reticent about it in the beginning, but once he saw the pictures, I think he was, he's more than happy that I was there throughout the day. Of course, it's not for everybody, but
So, in terms of being able to, you talked about the reticence of the husband, but how about the doctors in the hospital? Did you have to deal with any sort of logistics with respect to that?
well, Agatha had spoke to them all about this beforehand, so she had the consultant and the surgeon were all on board, and they were more than happy. The only thing that I was kind of warned about was that obviously through the theatre, there's probably 10, 15 people in there at that point. So I was conscious that I didn't want to include people who weren't really relevant to the actual procedure itself, so the auxiliary staff, if you like. Not because they weren't important, but because they weren't involved in the consultation about the photographs, etc. So I didn't think it was right to have them involved. And one of them did actually say, oh, we don't want any photos, kind of thing. So that was cool, and it went really well. The anaesthetist and the surgeon all came into the room beforehand, and I was introduced to them, and they were very, very grateful. And in fact, they both asked to look at the pictures afterwards, and immediately afterwards. So it was great. It went really well, and the staff involved on the day were brilliant. Simple as that. Really brilliant.
I can imagine that there's a lot of pressure at an event like this. I mean, there's pressure at a wedding, uh, but on the birth, I think has even more magnitude. So, like you said, you didn't have a shot list from which to work with. So, um, you get some really important storytelling images, like the blood pressure machine, the clock, and things like that. And it's easy to get really myopic though, and just focus on just the one thing. So, how did you sort of maintain your sort of equilibrium in terms of the emotion of the moment, your own feelings, because you're remembering your own child's birth, and and being able to take that sort of clinical step back to make sure that you got everything in order to tell the story. How did you sort of maintain that?
I think, again, it's a really good question, because it was something I was aware of, and before we went into the surgery, myself and the husband had to go and put our scrubs on together, and I asked him if he was nervous, and he said, yeah, I am now. And he actually asked me as well. He said, are you nervous? And I'd kind of said to myself that I wouldn't allow myself to get nervous, because it would impact on my work. And so I wasn't really nervous, but I was conscious that I was always conscious that I didn't want to get too caught up in the moment and lose sight of why I was there. And it would have been very, very easy to do that. So I made sure that I'd spoke to the surgeon beforehand, and he was cool with me moving around in a very small area. The room was a lot bigger than the area I had to move around in, and my camera choice, etc., was helped out in that respect. But I really wanted to make sure that you're right. I didn't fall into the trap of becoming glazed eyes and kind of stuck in the moment, because there is absolutely no time. You're right, with a wedding, even a documentary style wedding or a reportage style wedding, absolute worst case scenario, you can go back and you can say, hey, you know what, we didn't get this or whatever, and sorry. But if you don't get pictures of the baby being born, there's no going back there.
Mm. I thought you were really adept in being able to capture the emotion of the moment in shots where you didn't see the faces of the subject, like when they're when the mother is sort of wringing her hands or her fingers, or when the father to be is has his hands on his abdomen, and it brings his hand to his face. That says so much. Um, were you just really in tune with looking for gestures like that, or was it a case where you would see it and you'd go, "Oh, that would make a good photograph"?
No, I think basically what happens, it's exactly. I kept saying to myself, shoot it like it's a wedding. And the way that I shoot weddings is I'm literally a fly on the wall. I'm not part of the wedding. My whole point is that guests see me as another guest, effectively. And so I definitely didn't want to have any kind of intrusion on the day. And all of those moments unfolded between them, and it was my responsibility to just keep my eyes open and take those shots. And absolutely, you're right about things like the abdomen shots and the hands, and you've got the final touches of the baby in the belly before she's born, etc. Those images, those moments just spoke to me because I was there, and so I could capture those. And that happens every single birth, no doubt, all over the planet. Those kind of moments happen. But being there to be able to photograph it, and keeping your eyes open, and actually ears also, because many times I was in the other end of the room, and I didn't want to. It's their day and their moment, so I'm kind of listening as well. And once I hear something that's potentially going to turn into an interesting shot, then that will affect it. So yeah, absolutely. It was really a case of making sure that I told that story just like the way I treat weddings. I hoped.
These images are shown in black and white, but they're originally in color, and I thought it'd be a good point of conversation to talk about the choice to go to black and white. If you could show us a couple of versions in color and in black and white, and talk to us about, you know, your aesthetic choices in terms of how you finally rendered the photographs.
Okay, let me just share the images. So okay, so you can see that color image now, I guess.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Cool. So my style predominantly is black and white. Most of my work, any kind of photography that I do, any kind of social documentary, weddings, etc., is mostly black and white. And for me, that's because removing color when color is not part of the image brings people's attention to the story. It just kind of focuses them in on what's actually happening inside the picture. And so I rely on black and white a lot for for all of my work. And of course, there is color involved in this because during the key moments, the baby is born, and there's the call, and she's there's the blood, etc., etc. And so color is important. It's for the slideshow that I showed previously, the black and white version, that added coherence, and it made sense to put them all together in that respect. But some of the images actually I think have a little bit more impact in color during the actual birth itself. So this one, if I can zoom in a little bit, it's a bit pixelated. This is probably the kind of key figure, if you like, and in color, although this is a little bit graphic, I think it really demonstrates the what's happening through birth, and the actual delivery and coming out of the tummy, and the the fact that the doctor, the surgeon's holding up by her head, and you can just see how strong babies are at this point. And we see them as these little kind of weak and fragile beings, but actually they go through a hell of a lot when they're being born. And so it's a good introduction to life, I guess. And so color images like that I think have a little bit of impact. And again, around here, so the baby is this is essentially the reverse of that image, and it has a lot of impact in color. In fact, if you were to analyze it, you've got primary colors, red, green, and blue, working together here. But really, for me, black and white speaks more. It speaks more to me as a photographer. But I did deliver these images in color also to Agatha, because I think that certainly for this period of it, the color is an important element of it, and she's not queasy, which is great. So she didn't have to worry about seeing the stuff that was coming out, kind of stuff. So we have these images. Oops, excuse me, it's a little bit too close. So, and of course, a lot of people will think, well, that's a very, very tiny baby crying, and it's not necessarily a an award-winning picture, but it's not about that. Very few, my work isn't about that. It's about the emotion and the story, and allowing the clients in this case, and to forever have that moment, rather than it being just a memory in their head. And then for the little baby, she's always got those pictures to look at too when she grows up. And then you have kind of the previous ones here. So these kind of images here, I just kind of working in black and white for me is it just has far more impact. In this particular picture, for example, what would be going through my head if I was editing this is that color is not an image. Color is not a feature of this image, and so take it away, and it draws us much more into the story in that case.
Going back to the shot in the operating room, I like the change in position, because at first you're behind the doctor and then you move forward to get into the expression, and I think that's really an important thing to learn about coverage for an event like this, because it's easy to get so caught in the moment that you just keep photographing from one position. So tell me about that thought process in terms of being able to change it, because part of you being sort of invisible is you minimizing your movement, but obviously it was important to you to move. Can you explain why that was?
Sure. I was not aware that the actual C-section procedure itself took about 3 minutes. I was there for the long term. I thought this is going to be here. We're going to be here for a couple of hours or something. And the midwife, luckily, she said to me. I said to her, when would the baby appear? Is it going to be at the beginning of the procedure? Is it going to be at the end? Is it an hour? And she said, oh no, it will be very quick. And she said, I'll give you a nudge, which she didn't actually do, but because she was busy doing something else. But obviously, I could kind of see I was at this end of the covers, if you like. So the doctor, the surgeon there, the kind lad in blue, he'd already said to me that I'm welcome to go around behind him and at the head end, if you like. And so when the little girl was first pulled out, I really wanted to be there, because Agatha wanted those pictures. She wanted that very, 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 very first moment. So I was there, and it was actually just about 5 steps to bring myself back around here. You can see that. And there was probably about 3 seconds where the surgeon held up the little baby to show mum and dad, while the auxiliary nurses are dealing with the umbilical cord, etc. at this point. So I kind of had to work very, very quickly, obviously, but it's actually only about 5 paces. It wasn't a distance to cover. And but you're right. You're definitely right. I knew that I would only get this shot at this end, and the actual appearance of the baby could only be done from the other angle. So it was a case of making sure I got everything set up and kind of ran around effectively to get those shots. But the surgeon said to me afterwards that he didn't even notice me taking the pictures, which is great. Yeah. Exactly what I want.
Is often when you're thinking of a photo story, you often think about, okay, this is the one shot that sort of encapsulates everything. Even though you're doing a photo essay or photo story, is there one particular image that you feel sort of captures the whole spirit of what was happening in that moment? And if so, could you show us which image that is for you?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's actually both of these, really. This one is probably the most powerful one, because what's happening here is, his mum is looking straight into the face of the little baby at this point, whilst she's still effectively inside her tummy. It's a real kind of, one become two moment, and I didn't really expect or anticipate to get this particular picture. But this was the one that I really wanted to get, because this is almost a classic picture really of birth, and I really wanted to make sure I was there to. One of the ways that I operate is I try to deliver my clients, through weddings also, back to the moment. So it's almost from their eyes rather than from a voyeuristic point of view. I don't kind of stay in the shadows and shoot with a long lens. I try and get in very close with short primes, and then the whole point of that is to deliver them back to that very moment in time, as if they were there, rather than as if it was through the eyes of somebody else. So I knew that I wanted to kind of be in close, get there, and shoot this. This was the if I had to just select one image beforehand that I wanted to get, this type of image would have been the one for sure.
Yeah. If you can show us some of the black and white work, why don't you tell us real quickly in terms of the choices you made in terms of processing the color images into black and white?
Okay.
Wait, in order to be able to do that.
Can you see the black and whites now?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on a sec. I need to. Okay. Okay, so I guess for me, all my black and whites really are very, very similar. They are, I like deep blacks, and I like, although it's all shot digitally, I like to simulate film, the old film shots really, and there's lots of grain added, and a very slight sepia is added to pretty much all of my images. So in terms of processing, it's they were all shot on Fuji cameras, so straight into Lightroom, white balance, slight adjustment correction, and everything was shot in JPEG because I wanted to be able to shoot as quick as possible. So shooting raw will kind of slow me down slightly, and all of the editing is done in Lightroom, and a tiny bit of Photoshop processing in terms of dodging and burning. I tend to still do that in Photoshop.
Well, I really just love the choice. I'm in total agreement in terms of the effectiveness of the black and white for these. I mean, it's a powerful moment, but I just love how you sort of pare it down to just the sort of the critical elements in the shot by converting it over to black and white. And I think the processing of the black and white is really wonderful. You talk about the use of these small cameras because of how quiet they are. You're shooting in relatively low light conditions. So, were you using relatively high ISOs, shooting wide open? Could you discuss a little bit in terms of that?
Yeah, actually, the theatre itself, yeah, I mean, the room before the theatre was low light, but the theatre itself was very well lit, even though I kind of had visions in my head of this room that was going to have lots of mirrors and things like that. I'd done chrome, but actually it was just a blue room effectively. So that was quite well lit, and but when the procedure started, all of the lights dipped. It was almost like being in a cinema. All of the lights dipped, and so they could focus with spotlights on the work at hand. So yeah, it was shooting at kind of relatively high 3200 ISO at points, and certainly during the in the room beforehand, that was certainly around 3200 at some points, and I shoot wide open. So I shot the whole thing on an X100, which is f2 lens, and an XT. So this particular image we're looking at right now was shot on an XT1 56, so it would have been wide open at 1.2, probably around about 3200 ISO, something like that, I guess. Maybe a little lower actually in this image. But yes, it's I think for me the size and the noise that the cameras make was really was crucial on a day like today. Of course, you'd get these pictures with the DSLR, of course you would, but it was important for me to be as absolutely discreet as possible throughout.
Okay. Well, could we see you again? And if you could tell me, as we wrap up, the reaction of the parents to seeing the final photographs. That must have been very satisfying.
Yeah, they were very, very, very happy. I think, of course, by the end of the day, I was part of it. I was there with them, and it touched me. Obviously touched them a lot more, but it touched me too. And so I kind of went home and I edited a few of the key images pretty much straight away and forwarded it over to them. And they loved them. And then when I delivered them the slideshow, I think, of course, I wasn't there with them at that point, but they sent me some very kind words, and a nice bottle of wine came in the mail. And I think the father specifically, who wasn't so sure about the whole experience in terms of having a photographer there, I think he was really touched by it in the end, and I think he's really pleased that they have these images forever now.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Although kind of weddings are my bread and butter, it's that whole kind of social documentary is really what ticks for me. It's weddings pay the bills, but all of this kind of other stuff, human interaction is, I just love watching it and photographing it.
Well, you're a great photographer. I mean, I love all your work, not just this, but everything that I saw on your wedding site. So we'll have a link in the show notes for people to check out your body of work. So thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today, and for being patient with these little bugaboos that we have using Hangout. But
No problem.
I'm
Thanks very
excited.
much for inviting me on.
Absolutely.